Okay, now I'm working again on some more of the Cockies, which is one of the characters, and just trying to think again of maybe just some different ideas. As I'm doing this show, and I'm calling it a show, as I'm doing this assignment, it's one of those things where ideally I'd love to have, a lot of time to develop. Unfortunately, I don't have months and months and months to keep trying to develop these characters. So what I want to do is just try to get out any thoughts I have. So as I'm doing this, this was just some inspiration that I had. At one point, I was just sitting thinking about maybe a new approach, new idea. So here I am back to just my doodling phase again. As you can see, I'm just moving my pencil. Of course, again, it's been sped up a bit, but I'm just moving. I'm not focused on what placing all my, making sure everything's perfect. I'm not worried right now about tangents or anything else. All I'm trying to do is convey an idea. And the best way to convey your idea is just to start drawing and see what you can come up with. It's the same thing Rockwell did, which I explained before, when he started an idea from starting with a lamppost and moving on. Any illustrator, any artist, whether you're doing a painting, whether you're thumbnailing out your boards for storyboards, whether you're doing a background layout, whatever it is you're going to do, you need to start trying to just come up with the different ideas. So this is what we would call the thumbnail process. And you can do as many of these as you want, and I encourage you to do as many as you can, because the more you do, that's going to give you the ability to find maybe an idea within there. And at that point, you can start Frankensteining things. You can start to take one thing and apply it to the other. Maybe there's a nose shape you like and apply it to the body shape. You don't have to stay so committed to the actual drawing that you've actually done and just say, okay, I have to use this, because this is what it's all about, is just trying to find different ideas that work. This is the thinking, looking and doing and seeing what's working for you. So this is again just a really quick sketching process that I'll go through every time I'm about to draw. Oftentimes now I've become real accustomed to doing it on the Cintiq, which I'm using now, mainly because I can just, without wasting paper, just keep moving, do a new layer, and you can do that in using Photoshop or Alias Sketchbook Pro. So as I'm drawing from one drawing to the next, all of a sudden something starts kicking in my mind. He's got this scraggly mustache. His name's Cocky. Maybe his eyes are cockeyed. Maybe that might be an approach. I'm not sure, but I need to experiment. I need to feel that out and see, is that going to work? Is that what I'm looking for? And it might be the right solution, it might be the wrong solution, but keep cramming them out as much as I can. So I'm just basically right now just going over all the just little details, in a sense, just blocking in shapes. Once again, not so concerned about, I guess I would say I'm concerned about the design, thinking about certain things, but still there's a lot of things, if I were to clean this up, I would change, just as far as placement and certain ideas. So it's the looser you get, the more freedom you have to explore and again rely on those happy mistakes that you're going to make. So now I'm just going to draw an overall body shape. I'm thinking maybe, yeah, it'd be a fun idea just to cock his head over to the right, to the left, make his eyes a bit cockeyed, but still not quite sure if this is the right direction that I want to go in yet, and just see what happens. So as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about the whole overall design between all of them. Because I got my three characters, I got Driscoll, Cocky, and Ivan. So I really want them to have their own distinctive shape and personality to set them apart from each other. One of them is, Driscoll is this Irishman, so Cocky, I'm going to make this Englishman. So, in a sense, it's just a nice contrast just within the different types of characters. And remember when we were just doing those quick thumbnail sketches and everything, that gives me the breakdown, that gives me my overall idea of how I want to maybe approach his shapes, keeping everything kind of squat and small. But now it's just a matter of playing around. I'm not necessarily relying on my silhouette phase right now, just because I have those ideas in my head. So now I'm going to see what I can come up with just from just drawing and just seeing what comes of it. So this is, a lot of fun. This is just another take on the character Cocky. just to see what he comes up with, and he's going to change more from here. So because we're going to start getting into our cleanups now. So let's just keep moving on with this, and I look forward to seeing your work. And again, keep having as much fun as you can with this, and don't be afraid to take risks. Okay, what I'm and how I work, this is something where it, ranges all the time and varies, of course, but what I have underneath is my rough sketch, my real rough, and I'll show you that. You'll see that in a bit of the character that I was first doing. Next, I'm just slowly starting to, very loosely, just starting to tighten up. You'll start to see, you can see a little bit underneath how the legs are through there and the arms. But this is all about when you're cleaning up that you don't want to trace, because tracing your design is really the kiss of death, because that's when you start to lose all the life and everything within the drawing. So as I'm going over this, I'm just using like an B pencil and HB pencil, and I'm just going over it really loosely, really rough, just still trying to figure out my proportions that I really liked and that I was in tune with. But now I'm just want to just try to, pull him out a bit and figure it out. The reason I'm making him longer, I just felt it worked a lot better with his body. You can see though, even though dealing with these extreme proportions, I'm still holding true to a lot of things as far as where his elbows hit would be at the waist. That gives me an indication of, just reality and real proportions. Even though this is real cartoony, these are the sort of things that you need to just kind of understand and know. And the more you know this, then it's going to once again make you draw as much as possible. Because the more I vary my shapes, the more appealing I feel the drawing looks. And this is something that just through studying design and drawing so much, I just start to figure out what's really working and what isn't working. And the more you avoid parallel lines, the more you avoid those tangents within any shape, the better your drawing's going to be in the long run. It's just when you look at it at a glance, it's going to work. And because you're going to look at a lot of drawings and you don't necessarily know why. Why is this working? Why does it look so right? Why does it look so wrong? The more I really study and the more I draw, I really believe it's got to do with negative spaces are just a huge, huge factor within the overall, design, and avoiding parallel lines, because parallel lines don't exist in nature, and avoiding all this, and all of a sudden you're going to start to see results. So treat every aspect of your cleanup. What I'm doing right now, I'm just going to cut in here. I erased because I drew this little happy mistake here, but I saw another shape within there and it worked for me. So I erased the hat that I had going beyond his cranium and just made it just a smaller bill of the hat. But as I was saying, just every shape you need to focus on within its own little design. So make the cuffs and the sleeves is make just the t-shirt within his long sleeve shirt a shape. What sort of see that all these shapes, a lot of them triangular shapes, just start to work and make sense. So you can see that was my first design, and you can put that on pause if you want. It went pretty quick as I've sped this film up. And now I'm going to start my cleanup line. So this can go in many different phases. I've had my initial rough that I was using. Then I laid another piece of paper and I redrew it again to where I was happy. And now I'm taking another piece of paper over it on the light table just to start cleaning up, tightening up those shapes. Right now, I'm still not tracing. I'm just focusing on working, defining my shapes a lot more, making sure that, everything is going to work. So cleanups that don't really worry about tracing per se your actual line until your line is completely the way it needs to be, and you're going to add your pen and ink on top of it. It's processes where you just, it takes some time, so be patient with it, and you're going to keep going back and forth, try to see what works and what doesn't work. Through this, I'm just going to make periodic comments about the design. I could play music or something, but I don't have the rights to any music to play, so I'll just kind of talk every now and again as I'm kind of working on this. I use a just have an animation table, animation desk, which you probably saw in my beginning um, video. And it's what I like to do is, if you don't have an animation desk or if you don't have an animation table, don't worry. Just go out and go to some art store and get a little light table box. You can get them probably for about $30 or so, and those will work just fine. Because depends. If you do have a table, use that. If you don't, what I like about, so when I start to clean up, I'm going to be really moving my disc around. You're going to see me spin. It's even take note as far as the negative space just within his chest and his arm and how that's working. I'm constantly trying to think about avoiding the ladder within my design and going back and forth and just seeing what works. So as you can see now, I've turned off my light table and now I'm making little adjustments again as to how I want it to work. And now I'm just pulling out that shirt a bit more because it was too close to the, and just trying to get, my style is just very fluid, and I just kind of like drawing just through all my shapes just real quickly. What I'm going to do next, as there's two different ways you can clean up. One of them is you could just leave your drawing like this. You can erase it down and clean up straight over it. Otherwise, the next thing to do, you could do, is now that I have my initial rough here, is just take another piece of paper. So you can see how I'm going back and forth. That was my rough sketch right there, and then that was the next phase of going over it, just seeing what happens. Now what I'm going to do is just place my new rough on the table, and I'm going to grab a clean sheet of paper and tape that on top. Just lay that right over, and just pretty much now I'm going to be just tracing my line from there, because I got all my details for the most part that I want to work going on. What I use is a Mars Stadler brush pen. I used to use the Pitt, but I felt like they just kept tearing up a lot on the tips. This Mars Stadler tends to it has just a real nice tip, and it lasts for a long time. It's a synthetic, it's almost sponge-like. But notice, just the biggest thing is when you're watching this is just watch how I'm just kind of picking up and pulling down. What I'm trying to get right now are all my long shapes. Right now but I'm hitting down. It's almost like as I'm landing, it's like an airplane. I just kind of my hand is moving before I touch down on the paper, and that's important to do. That way you kind of get a nice taper within your line as you're doing it. This is doing more of a thick and thin. Is every job you work at, you're going to have a different sort of cleanup approach. One of them, you may just be using a pencil, and it just may be just one little thin line, just a consistent line all the way through. Some lines may be just like real thick. It's just one line, but the whole outside of the line is real thick and the inner line is real thin. Here I am, I'm just trying to make decisions as I'm going back and forth there. So as you can see, I'm spinning my disc around and around, and I do that just to help me get in the comfortable direction for my hand to pull. I don't want to push up on the pen. I'm always dragging down. I'm always pulling towards me whenever I can. Every now and again, I'll flip up if that's feeling right, if it works, but try to avoid that as much as you can, especially if I've played around using actual brush and India ink, and it's important to try that too. I think the more you experiment, then you'll start to find what's comfortable for you. And I found that this was really comfortable for me. This really worked. So keep your eye out on different techniques, because that's all this is technique here. This is just a style. This is using thick and thin lines and tapering, and it's just very easy and natural for me to do, and that's why I do it this way. But like I said, each show you're on, you're going to be presented with a different challenge using different mediums. When I was on was done, we just did the roughs, and then it went over to the cleanup where they did it in Adobe Illustrator and kept it real clean. But it's, it's important. I think this is an important craft to learn and understand, because at some points you're going to be called to do this, other points you won't. They will get a cleanup person for you on most shows, but other shows they won't. They'll say, you're responsible for cleaning up your own work. So you better make sure that you know how to do that and that you'll be the guy for the job. It's the same with turnarounds and everything else. Make sure you have that ability, and make sure you show it in within your portfolio, because that's what's going to get you hired. That's what's going to give you the job. Sped up a bit because I don't want you guys to get too bored. And sometimes I'll do these little short strokes where you can just kind of see right there. I'm just trying to really figure out slowly what I'm trying to achieve here, and just swooping down, spinning my board, making sure everything's just kind of going in the right way that I want it to go. The beautiful thing about this now is you can watch this over and over again. You can put it on pause, you can, rewind it. But jump in that chair and, start cleaning up your stuff, and just start cleaning up. Practice doing lines, just real simple lines. If you're just doing straight lines, practice doing cross hatching. Practice doing everything, because that's what's going to get you. On his hat, I felt got a little thick, but that's, I'll go back and I can fix that. The beauty about doing cleanup like this is you can always bring it back into Photoshop. You can there's two things. I can either just go and use whiteout right now and start fixing everything, which is, more of the old school way of doing things. Otherwise, I can just scan this. From there is I'll start making any changes and fixes that I want to do on this drawing, because there's certain thing, doing it in the Photoshop table now. And now you can see what we're kind of dealing with here with the character. So it's just it's fun. It's just practice. Look at the tapering in my lines. It just doesn't become these blunt lines at the end. What I'm using now is just a smaller black pen with the same sort of India ink within it, dark ink, and I'm just closing off all my lines and touching anything up, because that's what you need to do. You need to make sure, here I'm going using some whiteout, but what you need to do is just make sure that all your lines are closed, especially if you're going to be dumping color into it. That way it doesn't spread all over the place. It's going to make it easier for you, and if it goes to a cleanup, if it goes to the color department, they'll be real upset at you if all your lines aren't closed. It drives them crazy. This is a second phase of cleanup that I'm going to be talking about here. I just want to show you. Just get my colors down. Okay, now what I want to show you is another process. Here I am working on Khaki again. I've just had an idea of just for something that I want to do. So this is a great way, and this is the beauty of a Cintiq, or just using the computer. If you have a Wacom tablet, you could do the same thing. But it's just to start blocking in your shapes just by using color, because that's a great way of designing too. You can design by using color, design by using textures, design by doing a lot of these different variations. So here, just by using the colors, this gives me the opportunity to think about from the general to the particular. Here I am not thinking about anything else except the balance of this character, the shape variations within this character, the negative space within this character, the silhouettes within this character. This is all I'm focusing on. This is what makes it such a great sort of exercise to do, is sometimes just blocking in your color shapes, because then you can see it once again as a whole. I'm not focused on all the details, so I highly recommend this. You can also do this with markers if you want to do that too. Just do little thumbnails. You've seen maybe people do it with just, if they're doing background layouts and doing color keys, they'll just start blocking in colors. It's all about just blocking in the shape. So that's what I wanted to do here, was just demonstrate to you another way of doing things, and that's what it's experimentation. This is how you come up with these ideas, is just by doing. And this is how I came up with this approach. I don't know how many different people do this, but this for me was something that it really worked for me. So it's something that I would say give it a try, see if it works for you. From this, if I'm just blocking my shapes, I can really be choosing to pick a specific style here too. And that's what's so great about it, because I can start to get real three-dimensional with it. Otherwise I could keep it pretty graphic. The great thing is too, is if it's going to be a flash animated cartoon, this might be a great way to start designing your shapes. And everything is just from purely doing your color. So you're focusing on your small shapes, your medium shapes, your large shapes. Remember how much we've talked about that, not avoiding the ladder, not using the figure eight, not keeping everything symmetrical, creating more of just a balance that's just more natural to look at. So even if I was going to design, let's say, some sort of vinyl toy, this would be a great approach, is just by blocking in your color and working with these small, medium, large shapes. And I'm working on humans for this whole series, just because you're going to be drawing a lot of humans as a designer, or as an artist you'll be called upon to do that. But everything that I'm telling you, everything that I'm talking about, can be applied for any style, any type of card. If you want to do it with animals, if you want to do it with aliens, if you want to do it with robots, whatever it is you're trying to do, it's all the same philosophies, it's all the same principles, it's all that you're using the same elements. So just take this for the human aspect. And if you say, well, I don't want to draw humans, well, you do want to draw humans. It's the most important thing to learn how to draw. And from this you can start to take this, because it's the same thing. Small eyes, big nose. What's the focal point within the face? What's the focal point within any character that you're trying to do? Even if you were designing something for Star Wars, same sort of thing. What I'm doing right now is just showing you starting from scratch to clean up within the computer. Oftentimes when I do cleanup in the computer, I'll usually use Illustrator, but I don't want to do an Illustrator sort of demonstration, because that's a whole different story. I just want to show you a different approach, just using Photoshop. But you can use Painter too. I actually like using Painter. Is a real fun one to use. But I don't actually do too much cleanup in the computer in general. It usually is for me by hand. I'd rather just do it by hand. So as I'm doing this is just a demo to you that it can be done to an extent. So what I've done is I've just lowered my opacity within my character, and now I've created a new layer, so that way you're not destroying if I have to erase or anything else. And the beautiful thing is, of course, about Photoshop is all you have to do is hit anyway, just a new cocky that I was thinking, I want to make this guy English, and but in a sense, I don't want to make him cocky. I don't want to make him cocky. I kind of just want to give him. He's just got this cocky attitude. Maybe that's where he got his name from. So this is the character that I'm gonna go with based on all the other bits of development you've seen. I thought, now that I'm doing this, I kind of like the way he's going. Here I am. I just erased the line because I felt I wasn't my lost my thickness within the line. And once again, as you can see, I am not tracing at this point. If you trace Kiss of Death, you're gonna not get the life. You're not. This is still your opportunity to fix things within your design. Always keep that in mind. Don't trace it because you're going to ruin your drawing and it's going to become very stiff. So here I'm still trying to figure out my shapes, but the beautiful thing why I can change everything now as I am cleaning it up, everything's becoming more clear to me as how I want to approach it, how I want to do it. Now with his shirt and everything, I'm creating more form. I want to, instead of just going straight down, just through those lines, creating a texture within my design, if you will. I've created the feeling that he has a bulge within his stomach. I've done that through my contours and different lines, but had I just done straight lines, my drawing would have become very flat. On his nose, I just took that shape all the way around, see if it worked. It wasn't working for me, so I'm just gonna actually define more of a nostril within his shape. And the same thing, now I'm just trying to find my center line for where I come down with the mustache. Once again, please don't trace. And as I start looking at your work, I'm really going to be, keeping an eye out from that, looking at your roughs that you have and going to the next step. So here I am just drawing through. I made sure that the bottom of that jaw was coming through there. Here I just wanted to add a couple of wrinkle lines within his neck, so that's okay to do. Come in late, make any sort of adjustments or anything else you need to do. And now he's got a straggling gray mustache, so right now I'm just gonna draw in a couple lines just to kind of break up the shapes a bit. Once again, variation in the lines. I don't like to just use those parallel lines. Here it's important again. I've really set the mood and tone just through his eye expression. So the eyes are extremely important. So learn how to draw eyes. I've really created a lot of character just within using the eyes. When I come to coloring this guy, I'm actually going to change the color of his eyes. I'm going to maybe give him one blue eye, one green eye. Just might be kind of fun. Just to kind of make him that more of a shifty, sort of cocky kind of character. Now I'm just kind of backing up. Now I just kind of want to look at it as a whole, how it's working out, what I need to do. So there's still changes that are going to be made here. So the next phase is I've just kind of got rid of my back line. The line that I was using. Now what I want to do is start building up my thick and thin lines. So that's what you're going to see me do now, is just slowly start building those up. A rule of thumb when you're doing cleanup is to make, especially when you're using thick and thin lines, as a rule of thumb in general, is if something is coming forward or overlapping, make that a little thicker. And if things are going backwards, then you can make those lines a little thinner. And why that works, it just gives the illusion of depth. It helps sell the depth within the drawing. So as I've just done that line over there on his arm, by making that thicker, brings that arm forward. You can take cleanup into different levels. One, think about maybe the light source. That will affect your cleanup line. Just try to study how light works, because then it's going to help you, especially when you come to coloring your drawings or anything else. It's going to make it more believable. I typically have a tendency to draw a lot heavier on the bottom. It tends to give more of a weight. Almost like, just feels like there's more of a gravitational pull, because it's lighter on top and heavier on the bottom, and it almost helps, in a sense, balance your artwork too. So that leg's underneath, behind, make that a little darker. So keep this in mind whenever you're doing all this, when you're working on your cleanup line. And make sure it's consistent. Don't start getting, I've seen a lot of cleanup where it gets real thick on one side, and it's, you got these thick lines, and it's just not consistent throughout. So make sure there's just a balance. Make sure you almost have it going. You have these thick and thin lines all throughout. Make sure you're tapering off your lines. Here I am just erasing. Wasn't happy with that line. I can go back in. That's the beauty again of Photoshop. It's just a quick fix. And for production work too. Because this isn't an original piece of artwork, I don't have to worry so much about it. So this is all part of the the process as I'm going through, and then looking at it from a distance, I can look back and say, does it feel balanced? Do I feel like I have my thick and thins evenly distributed throughout my design? So it's important, if you are going to clean up, make sure in the computer, make sure you zoom in and out, go back and forth and see where you're at. And this is one style of cleanup line. Here I'm adding a couple wrinkles in his jacket, but I decide that I don't like them. I don't want them there. They're not working. Kind of, cluttered up the design a bit for me. But now I just kind of want to add some extra details based on my photo reference that I have with this guy wearing a shirt. He has, a pocket and a turtleneck. And here I'm still just thinking about making changes. What I want to do now is I'm adjusting his arm size. I felt his arm got too big and too long, so it wasn't looking right to me. And this is the beauty of Photoshop again, is now I just scaled it down. You can see that's where it was. And I'm going to now do it on a new layer because I forgot to make a layer, so I want to show you my mistakes. And now I've just shrunk that arm down, and I moved it out from the body a bit more just to clear that silhouette up a bit more. So I thought that was just an important thing to do. So here I am just still slightly adjusting it, want to move it higher. And this is what's so wonderful about this program, to be able to do that. So now I'll just go in and redraw my lines back on there. Also, I want to make sure my volumes are correct. So I want to make sure that that arm has as much thickness as the other arm, where I felt it was getting too thin before. It's important to understand clothing and folds in clothing, but you need to understand the form that's going on underneath there, because now I understand the form. There's the old arm, there's the new arm. I feel that's a lot better within the design. But understanding how weight and gravity is going to pull on your shirt, you need to know that. How are things going to hang, where are things going to rest, and that's how you can figure out drapery and clothing, is just think about where the push and pull is. And the way you get better at drapery and understanding that is, of course, drawing in your sketchbook and drawing out of magazines and drawing out of books. Here I am changing my color again. I still wasn't happy with the way it looks, so I just want to kind of create more of the color that I see in my photo reference on the shirt, and then it kind of breaks up the design a bit, so I can play around with that, and then I can just go back in and just erase that underline there. And then I just want to do the same on the other side. But so understand, clothing, understand where the push and pull, the folds come from, where the weight's coming from, why it droops the way it does, and then you're going to make your drawings more believable too. So this is cleaning up in the computer, doing from start to finish, from that color block, adding the next shape, starting my outline, and then losing everything. So give it a whirl, have fun. Okay, and here we have Ivan, who I'm going to be doing a cleanup now of. So I just had drawn from the computer. The next thing that I did once I had drawn it was I printed it out to the size that I wanted. Sometimes it's helpful to clean up really big. When I have a lot of characters that I have to clean up for a specific show, I tend to make them almost half this size and clean them up half the size, just because my rough kind of tightening it up a bit with my pencil. I'm just using a regular non-photo blue pencil, a color erase pencil, and actually it is, you'd be able to see it if you made a copy of it, but it would be really light. The thing that I'm trying to figure out right now for my rough is my hands. It's very important to pay close attention to your hands, or whatever detail that you struggle with a bit, or if it's not feeling right, make sure you figure it out in this stage. The initial rough that I did gave me a sense of what the hand was going to be doing and the gesture. But now going it over in this detail, I'm trying to really figure it out a lot more and how the hands are going to work. Now here at this phase 2, I'm making an adjustment. I decided that I wanted to change the type of hat that he has because I have Driscoll styles of hats and just different shapes in general, and that's what I've really focused on, is playing around with the variety and shape. So at this point again, it is very important to make sure that you're not tracing, that you're taking it to the next level. Make sure that you're not going backwards at this point. Make sure you're kind of really moving forward and you're giving it the look and doing everything that you want to do at this point, because this is going to be where your finalized drawing takes place. And you can, if you're happy with it. So don't feel that you need to commit. Once again, the thing that I learned the most in this industry in animation once I got in was the discipline, was to draw things over and over again and not just settle for the first thing. Whatever it is that you're going to do, it is extremely important to make sure that you're doing it right, because if you can't color a bad drawing, you don't, it's clear that everything you want to say and do is done at this phase, because adding color is not going to fix it, and people tend to think that that's what will happen, or they just want to rush into doing the color. So make sure you really commit. Here I am just drawing my center line just so that I know where to kind of place my belt. It's important to understand where the loops are within your pants. It's a simple thing. Just look down at the pants you're wearing, or when you take your pants off tonight, before you go to bed, look at where all the loops are. Look how your belt works within the loops, that you have one back thing from behind. Make sure that you keep an eye on that as much as you can when you're drawing all this sort of stuff. Here now I've drawn my basic shape for my shirt, and I'm adding some folds and rips and placing them, and I'm going to add one on this other side just to balance the drawing table off. Now you can really see where I'm going with changing everything else around it, and now I've made certain adjustments and still just tightening things down a bit. Here I'm just tightening down my hand a bit more, and I'm going to keep going over that as I just kind of want it to wrap around the form of the bottle that is holding within his hand. Also within you can see his hairs and everything that I've added. I've just really varied those shapes. I'm not just drawing a bunch of parallel lines. There's a rhyme and reason for all those. And just having fun. I mean, this guy's just this big circle head on top of this big oval body, and everything's there within the drawing. So make sure that, again, you really just tighten your drawings. Here I'm just adjusting. I felt like the bill of the hat was too parallel. So this is my chance to make that adjustment and change it just so that it's not as parallel. You'll find the more that you almost create this sort of V shape with everything that you do within your design, because the V, unlike a U can be very parallel, and the V shape can all of a sudden just has this nice tapering in line, and it's staying away from any sort of parallel lines and keeping things symmetrical. By drawing that V shape, there's just a nice taper. There's contrast in angles, there's contrast in shape, that you have that sort of V shape, those tapering lines going on within your drawing as much as you can. I erased over by the arm just because I felt the volumes, once again, that one forearm was thicker than the other forearm on Driscoll, and I didn't even have an underlying drawing on that paper. I just started my cleanup over it. This is the other type of cleanup you can do, and this is the most common way that I will do it when I'm doing cleanup, is because you're drawing a blue pencil, get a kneaded eraser and make sure you hold your paper down. That's very important so that you don't rip. What happens is, and it's happened to me a lot, I'll bunch up my paper when I'm erasing it and crinkle it. So make sure you hold it down tight and just take that kneaded eraser and you just start erasing until there's almost a really faint light blue line. The thing is, if there is any blue still left coming through it, when you end up putting it in Photoshop, and adjusting your levels and everything and bringing up your contrast, you're going to bring up your blacks, you'll end up losing all that blue anyway. So it's not a problem, especially for production. If this is going to be an original piece of artwork that you're going to be giving someone, you may not want to get so heavy handed with the blue, and you'd probably want to do the cleanup the other way, which I did, where I didn't have any blue line, I just had my ink line straight on top. So if it's going to be an original piece of artwork, maybe think about it, that way, if it's for a commission or something. But otherwise, for production artwork, and if you know you're going to be scanning it in the computer, just do it this way. Here I am still making adjustments on my hands because I didn't feel they were working right again as you're doing it. So now I'm just kind of removing my bottom piece right there, just so that I can now have a nice clear sheet. I'm not distracted by anything underneath, and I've just taped down my bottom piece of paper, and now I'm going back with my ink. It's important to practice doing lines like this, just cross hatching and dragging your lines, keeping them nice and close to each other, and try different thicknesses, thick and thin, whatever it may be. Just get that down. The reason I did that was just to make sure that this pen was working okay and that my tip. But once again, the great thing about these pens, the Mars Stadler, quite a while before they get blunt. Here I am again, just really pulling down my strokes. I have a weird way of holding my pen. My pencils, I kind of tuck my thumb in. I kind of hold it in a weird way, but that's not the right way or the wrong way. It's whatever your signature is, really, however you hold. So what I'm doing is I'm just finding all my long shapes so I can just drag, pull my lines. See, as I'm spinning the table real fast, what I'm trying to do is just really get the lines in the right position so that it feels comfortable to me, that I know my arcs. That's the thing, it's all through experimentation. The limitations of your hand, how far you're going to be able to pull a line, or how sharp you need to make it, whatever it is. What I did right there, I was just drawing through. Even as I'm doing my pen and ink, just make sure you're just kind of drawing through. Just pull your pen through to the other shapes so that it works out and that all the lines are connecting in the right way. Now I'm just kind of dropping in, whereas pants, so I'm dropping in more of my vertical lines now, coming in. And even those, I don't make those parallel, I just kind of make those more of an angle. Here I'm just blocking in this whole shape, and notice how each one of those lines I just pulled isn't the same length. It's almost a long line, a short line, and then another long line, and then another short line. Therefore, I'm creating rhythm within the design. I'm creating small, large, small, large. When you're doing things like that, and just the flow of line, you're also doing that within the design using rhythm as an element. So I could be drawing something from black to white, black to white, black to white, and now I'm just wrapping the shirt. I just wanted to make sure that shirt was kind of overlapping. Here, it's, take your time wherever you need to take your time. Here I was, I'll go back and fix that line, but I just have this real quick, you can kind of see me almost just the way I'm just kind of flicking like that. It's my mind that's doing all that. I'm just thinking of like, where am I going to pull this line? What's the most effective way? And this is one of those things which takes a lot of practice. You're not going to get this overnight. I've practiced using many different types. Like I mentioned before, I thought, hey, one of my heroes, Mort Drucker, used a Gillot 19. Hey, he uses a Gillot nib. If I use a Gillot nib, I'm going to get the exact same lines and do everything that he's going to get out of it that he does, and I'm going to be able to achieve the same thing. But that's not the case. You really need to find out what works for you. So I tried that, and it's fun, and it was great, but it was one of those things where it didn't, it wasn't comfortable for me. It didn't feel right for me, and I didn't want to do it just because he did it. So I had to find my own way, my own pen and ink technique that I was going to use, and this is what I came up with, and this is what became comfortable. Just experiment. So try, because you may not find this comfortable, you may not enjoy this. So don't feel just because I'm doing the fact of the matter is, whatever it takes. If you're using pencil to get a thick and thin line, that's fine. You can achieve the same look with a pencil. It just takes a lot longer because you're building up the shape slowly as you're building and defining a line. So each way of doing cleanup is completely different from the next, and each show that you go on will determine by either the director or by yourself as to what the cleanup line should look like. So just be prepared to know how to clean up with a pencil, clean up with a pen. If you're just doing a full thick line like we did on Clerks, it was more of a tapered line for Kim Possible. Danny Phantom was cleaned up in Illustrator. It was just to know how to do it, and even learn Illustrator, because you can save a lot of time, especially when it comes round to doing your turns or mouth charts or anything else that you're going to be required to do at some point. It's one of those helpful things to use, so I've used that a lot too. But once again, like I said, I prefer to use pen and ink because I'm just so much caught up in the feeling of an original. I just love having an original piece of artwork. I just love the feeling of getting my hand dirty. I feel like computers today are just kind of replacing the originals, and I just want to be able to just keep that art form alive just for myself, just to do it because it's so fun. But like I said, with production, I'm using the Cintiq a lot because it's production artwork. I don't own the artwork. What happens is with all that artwork, it just gets thrown in a file somewhere and never really seen again in the archive somewhere, but no one will ever find it. Even when you're doing a nostril, as I'm doing here, it's not too easy to see, but it's a shape within a shape. So by drawing your shapes within your shapes, and I define that more through my cleanup line, that's the goal, that's the target here with what you're doing. Once again, understanding where your center line and everything is within the face, and take your time. I don't expect you to get this straight away, but the more you practice, the better you'll get. And I'll work with you as you're turning in your work and your cleanup, whatever it is that I see. I'll like to then I'll work with you. But I definitely would like you to try this brush pen. So if you can order this off some of the art stores, off the internet. Just type in the word. What is this? This is a Mars Stadler. It's a brush pen. Otherwise, just go to your local art store, and I'm sure they'll have them there. They cost about $1.19, $1.20 for them. It'll last you a long time. So pick up some brush pens, or if you even have a Faber-Castell Pitt, use those, practice using those, and give this a whirl. And then just use thin pens. Just try everything that you can. And even pick up some brush pens. Not brush pens, I'm sorry, but some brushes. Pick up like a number 2, a number 1 brush, paintbrush, and get some India ink and try painting with just brush pen and ink, because this will become easy. The beautiful thing about these brush pens are you don't have to keep dipping it. And I always know the consistency of what it's going to be. Here I just want to change his ear shape a bit. And then I put my signature. This can get really thin too, and that's how I'm able to do these little spots and things on his face, just by drawing really, just getting so used to it. Now I'm just pulling all these different hairs towards me and away, changing the variety. It's almost with Kim Possible, with Rufus's, his whiskers. I didn't make them all the same size. I varied the shape within there, just these small, medium, large kind of shapes within there. So just looking at this overall design in general, I have this small, breaking it down into parts, from the little small forehead to getting to nose, where it just kind of, and the eyes, it tapers in. Then I just have a long upper lip from the nose to the lip, and then it gets small from his chin. So what's happening is there is a rhythm being formed just within the design itself. So try to find that within your designs. Do you see the small, large, small, large, small, large, small, sort of thing going on, whether it be small, medium, large, whether you're creating that sort of rhythm within your design? Can you see that within your designs? Or do you have the ladder effect going on? Does everything seem like it's going on the same place? Here I am again using my little black pen, which is just making sure I'm just fixing my lines a bit, just coming in as much as I can, just making sure my lines are closed off when I put color in it, and just adding a little bit of thickness where I can. You can also use, I like using a black, very thin pencil, or a Prismacolor, black Prismacolor pencil. You can go in and touch up any of your lines with that too. So that's okay to use because it's still going to be black and it's going to work out just fine. So whatever you need to do just to make sure your lines are closed off and your drawing's looking good. That's the end result. Is there a nice balance going on? Is everything feel balanced? Does everything feel like all the shapes and all your lines, you got the right thickness of line? You have some in there. So usually on the lines that are wrapping around to the bottom, they get a little heavier. Where anything typically bends, like the elbows, you can see I've made it a little lighter. Just because in a sense I'm creating some sort of tension. So because that tension's there, I've made that a little lighter. So just think about that. If something was being pulled and bending, it'll get just a little bit lighter where that effect's happening. So keep that in mind with your cleanup. And so this is going to wrap up the cleanup. So have fun doing this, practice, and never stop practicing this. This is going to be something you'll use for the rest of your life. So here we have the three cleaned up characters, variations, and they're all next to each other, and the lineup's looking pretty good. So now I just wanted to go back in and touch up on Driscoll real quick because there were a couple of things that I had done. The ear, I wasn't too happy with his ear, and also where his sideburns are. I just wanted to define more of a shape for his sideburns. So now what I'm going to do is just, also trim down some of the hat because it was just a little thick. So I can go back through and touch up this as much as I want, and start shaving down places and thickening things up if I want to. But right now what I want to do is just really define this shape and almost just create more of a half circle. I think it would just be a lot better and clearer of a shape than what I had. So now his actual sideburn, in a sense, has its own little shape. So that's important when you're cleaning up or when you're designing, to try to create each element, give it its own unique shape, from the eyebrows to the nostril to whatever it may be. The more you do that, the more you think about that, I believe the more successful you'll have of a design in the long run. So keep that in mind as much as you can. So here I'm just trimming down some areas where I thought maybe just got a little bit too thick for me, and it'll just kind of help with the whole design in itself. So with the ear, I just thought it was too big and it was too even to the his sideburns. If you look at the shape of the ear and the shape of the sideburns, it's almost that ladder effect where they were almost the exact same width. So what I want to do is just change and vary that width. So almost when you look at it from left to right, from looking at his ear, which would be the first shape you look at, then going into his brow, then into his sideburns, then into his face. So I almost have this small ear, medium sideburns, and large face. So just that within itself, when I'm looking at it as a whole, it seems to feel better to me. It's, remember what I had initially talked about, what design is just about grabbing the elements and placing them and designing your shapes into a whole. It's like creating the alphabet or creating words out of the alphabet. You take certain words, you put them together, take certain letters, you put them together, and you create words. It's the same sort of thing. What I'm doing is I'm placing letters next to each other. Some letters don't work next to each other and they don't say anything. Some letters do work next to each other and they say something. So that's ideally what we're doing here, is trying to create words. As we're placing shapes next to each other, we're trying to say something. So when you look at it, it becomes just natural and easier to look at. So by doing that, for me, I think it's just kind of help sell the word a bit more from the small, medium, large, if I'm breaking down just those three separate elements. Now I'm just trimming his nose down a bit, just because this is the beauty again of Photoshop. Once you stick this in, I can start closing up any lines that I do see that I have left open or anything else. So it's a really fabulous tool. If you don't have Photoshop, definitely be sure to get it. This is actually CS2. So here once again are the characters. They're all lined up, and this is my show that I've created, my three main characters. So from here I can now do the turnarounds, which is next week, and then the expressions.